This is cs952 Introduction to Web Technologies and Design, and in this module we're going to learn how to add jQuery to our site, external jQuery that's not already a part of Bootstrap or already a part of Dreamweaver. There's a lot that's built into both the Dreamweaver components and the Bootstrap components, but what if there's something else we'd like to add? And we're going to get started by adding FancyBox. Now, we're looking at the FancyBox page. What is it? FancyBox is a tool for displaying images, HTML content, and multimedia in a Mac-style lightbox that floats over top of a web page. It was built using the jQuery library. I just found this page. You can just Google FancyBox, and there's a whole lot that you can do with it, but we're going to keep things pretty simple for our class. They give you some examples on the jQuery site of how the FancyBox plugin works. I've created a slightly slimmed down, easier to install version for our uses. So let's get started adding this to our website. I'm back over here in Dreamweaver, and let me close that up. If you just launched Dreamweaver, you know we have a lot of files we've been using are in our tutorial file. So I recently updated the CSS for our FancyBox plugin, and so rather than using the FancyBox CSS that's in our tutorial file, we're going to download an updated CSS file from our websites. Everybody's website, I've gone through and updated your site, so you actually already have the file that you need. We just need to go and get it. So I'm going to click on the Expand to show local and remote sites, and then I'm going to click on the Connect icon to connect to our remote server. Dreamweaver connects and shows me all my local and my remote files. So the file I want is right here in my CSS folder, and it's called FancyBox. So to get started, I've opened up my CSS folder on my remote server, and this is the file I want, fancybox.css, and it's already in my CSS folder. So I'm just going to click on the down arrow, the Get Files from Remote Server. Ask if dependent files should be included, and I'm going to say no. Okay, we've got our CSS. Now what about some of the other components that we need? We need to copy the FancyBox folder that has images. So this is very specific how we copy this over. In fact, I'm going to drag over my files panel so we can make this a little bit clearer to see what we're doing. If we look in our tutorial folder, there's a folder called jQuery. And inside of our jQuery folder, there's a folder called Images. And inside of that Images folder, there's a folder called FancyBox. So what I want to do is copy the FancyBox folder that's in my Images folder in the tutorial folder. I want to copy that to my main Images folder. So all I'm going to do is, let's open up our main Images folder right there, okay? So this is our primary Images folder. So we just want to copy the folder that says FancyBox that's inside of the Images folder, that's inside of the jQuery folder, that's inside of our tutorial folder. We're just going to drag that over to our primary Images folder. So I'm going to click on the folder that says FancyBox and just drag it right on over. Got it. I'm hovering right over the Images folder. I'm going to release, and there we have it. And it's very important that the FancyBox folder that has these images is inside of a folder that's called Images. Next thing I need to do is to add in the actual JavaScript file that's going to kick off our FancyBox and make it work. And I'm going to find that in my jQuery folder and my tutorial folder. This is the spot where we just now grabbed our FancyBox images. If we open that up, I can see I've got a file here called FancyBox.js, JS for JavaScript. And I want to drag that over to my main JavaScript folder, which is right here. So I'm just going to drag FancyBox.js from my tutorial jQuery.js folder to my main JS folder. So find that FancyBox.js file and then just drag it straight to your JS folder. Click and drag over. That's done. Now, we need to do one more bit of dragging files around or copying files, we need to add in the JavaScript that's going to initialize FancyBox to make it work. And that we're going to add over to our templates file. So I'm going to go to beginner and say reset beginner. It organizes all of my files. And I'm going to double click on my templates folder. The most important thing is that we have our FancyBox needs to come after the line of code that says jQuery 1.11.3 because FancyBox relies on this code to work. If you try to run FancyBox before this code is loaded, it won't work. We can find our FancyBox initialization code by going to our tutorial folder. So I'm going to scroll down and I'm looking for Module 6. Let's see, here we go. Module 6, FancyBox JavaScript code. So this is the code that I want to copy. We call this the initialization code. After we link to all the files that we need, this is the code that actually jumpstarts the program and gets everything going. So these are the lines of code that I want. The script type equals JavaScript, my document ready initialization, and then my closing script tag. So I'm going to right click and choose copy. So let's put all the parts in place now. So at the top of my template file, I'm going to add in first my FancyBox CSS, that file that we dragged over a little while ago, or rather we downloaded from the internet from our remote server. I'm going to drag over fancybox.css. Okay. So this loads in my CSS file. Right there we go. Now I'm going to scroll down. I've got my CSS loaded, so we have Bootstrap, Nav, Styles, and then we have FancyBox. I'm going to scroll down now to the bottom of my page where I have my JavaScript and my jQuery, and I'm going to add my FancyBox after. Pretty much I can put it anywhere as long as it's after this line of code, my jQuery line of code. So let's go and let's drag over my FancyBox JavaScript. Okay, this is it right here, FancyBox. Just going to drag that down. I'm going to put it after this last closing script tag. And then the last part that we need is the code that we copied. The code that we copied from this section. We need to add that onto the page. I'm going to hit return for a new line and hit paste. Now I've got it. That's the actual initialization that's going to make my FancyBox work. So we've added all the parts that we need to this page. So we're going to save all, update all our pages, and then get started actually adding FancyBox to the website. So I'm going to go and click on Save All. Dreamweaver asked, do you want to update all the files based on this template? I will update. Close, and now we are good to go.